Hello, and welcome to another episode of Todd Talks. When Todd talks, people listen. Hopefully. Today, I am excited because we are about to have a very fun death battle happen next week between Aang from Avatar versus Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist. Now, if you haven't seen the recent death battle cast, the team knows that this was actually one of the most highly requested death battles ever in recent memory, and they were supposed to have it last year or last season during like the most request ever's fest, but because of the animation and the fact that they wanted to have this death battle be just freaking epic, they delayed it a year and replaced it with Sora versus Pit, which was great on its own. And so now you're finally getting to experience it. It's going to be fully voice acted. It's going to have a lot of bending and alchemy. So this is going to be good. But who's going to win? I'll break it down for you. So, Aang. Oh, wait, we got to do this right. Fire, earth, water, air. Long ago, the four nations used to live in harmony, but everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all four elements, is able to bring balance to the world. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. Or did he? Okay, I wasn't going to do the whole thing for you, but long story short, the former Avatar, Avatar Roku, a firebender, was killed after trying to save a village, his own village, in fact. He was betrayed by his friend, the then Fire Lord Sozin. And upon his death, a new avatar was born in the form of Aang. The Fire Nation, led by Sozin, decided that they needed to make sure that their invasion of the world wouldn't be opposed. So they waited and then attacked the entire air nomads and basically wiped them all out, with the exception of Aang, who, after finding out he was the Avatar, felt, well, he was 12 when he found out, and he was basically being forced to leave his life and leave his mentor, Monkey Yatsu, who I always thought was called Monkey Yatsu. My bad. And so he ran away, trying to get away from the responsibilities of being the Avatar. And upon being put into a storm, he gets knocked off of his air bison Appa, falls into the freezing waters, and then goes into the Avatar state, which we'll be talking about later, and freezes himself for 100 years until two members of the Southern Water Tribe, Southern Death Battle, Southern, Sokka and Katara found him and released him and brought the Avatar back into the world. Now, Aang's journey at first was anything but typical. He didn't even want to be the Avatar. He wanted to just be Aang, this 12-year-old kid who wanted to have fun and had a crush on Katara, which they kept emphasizing all first season. I don't know if we ever realized when we were watching it the first time, but they were like trying to say, hey, these two are going to get together. We get it! Anyway, sorry, calm me down. Anyway, once Aang realized that he needed to save the world, he went on a journey across the entire world, from the Fire Nation, the Earth Kingdom, the Water Tribes, and even went back to the Air Nomads at points to complete his training of mastering all four elements, for only then could he fight the new Fire Lord, Ozai, and save the world. And that's exactly what it did. It took him 3 seasons and 60 episodes, which is better than 50 years with Sam and 50 episodes for Samurai Jack, but I digress. Oh, wait, it was 60 episodes for Samurai Jack. So, hey, it was about the same. Anyway, and technically, if you think about it, Aang was frozen for 100 years, so that actually beats the 50. Anyway, so during his journey, Aang had to learn all four elements of bending. Now, it's specifically stated that in this world, people of certain tribes can either learn bending or they can't. It's not everyone can bend. It's even stated that benders are actually vastly outnumbered by non-benders, referencing Legend of Korra. But those who can bend only can learn one element, with the exception of the Avatar, who can wield all four. Plus, I'll explain later. Anyway, so Aang was an air nomad to start, and so his bread and butter, for lack of a better term, is his air bending. With that, he can create barriers. He can create an air bubble that he can actually ride on that is incredibly fast. He has a staff which turns into a glider, which he manipulates the air currents on to ensure that he can fly, including flying high into the air, going at fast speeds, everything. He can create air blasts that can knock people far away and even push back very heavy creatures. He can also compact the air to be more destructive. He can even slice through solid flaming boulders with a kick of air. It's pretty impressive. Water, which was his second element he learned while at the Northern Water Tribe. Northern. He learned how to heal wounds, which is one of the bread and butters of the Water Tribe. It's what makes them one of the better elements, despite the fact that they have to have water on them, which is a weakness, obviously. He can create water whips, which is one of his favorite techniques, along with Katara. He can actually create waves of water and pillars of water. He can drench people. He can freeze the water into ice to capture people, which he's done many times, including some of the deadliest enemies in the show, like Azula and Zuko. He can actually ride the waves. He's so fast he can actually run on water, which is cool. And yeah, so basically anything he can think of to do with water, he can do with water. Next was earthbending, which came from Toph. And okay, first of all, Toph is a boss. And if you're still mad about Toph versus Gaara, get over it. Okay? They explained infinitely why Toph wins. So Toph is a boss, so stop. Anyway, he learned earthbending. Earthbending obviously is one of the more robust bending techniques because Earth is everywhere, except for in the oceans. And despite what the terrible, terrible live-action movie states, earthbending does not take 10 people to do. And Aang is actually quite proficient with it, despite the fact that he struggled with it early on. He actually had a hard time learning it from Toph because of his more pacifistic nature, which your personality definitely determines how well you learn bending techniques. For example, Korra, the avatar after Aang, had trouble learning airbending because that was a spiritual thing, whereas water, earth, and fire were easy for her because those can be very offensive. Whereas, airbending is pacifistic in nature more times than not because of the monks who used it in the early days of airbending and to that day of Aang. Anyway, so he eventually learned to use it. He can shift the earth in any way he wants to. He can raise up pillars. He can create boulders and fling them at foes. He can create stone walls to protect himself. He can actually mold the earth into armor and use it to protect himself and have it compact so much that it can even survive an explosion. He learned, I honestly forgot this, I'm glad I looked it back up, but Aang actually has a version of the seismic sense. It's not as refined as Toph's, I don't believe, because he rarely uses it, but the seismic sense basically is he can feel the vibrations of the earth, so he doesn't have to actually see to fight. And he took on both Toph and Katara while blindfolded using just the seismic sense. And so if you make a vibration in the earth, he's going to note it. So it's pretty cool. And earthbending, for the record, is my favorite. Then firebending was the last one. He learned that from Zuko, his frenemy for a long time, and then eventual ally and best friend. And what's that? Sorry, saw something on my desk. He learned firebending. He didn't use it that much in the series because it was actually the last element he learned. But when he did use it, he was shown to be a master of it. He even fought Fire Lord Ozai under the power of Sezon's Comet and used enough fire to not only block his attacks, but actually take down one of his airships. It's very impressive. Then the secret art bending that he learned was spirit bending or energy bending. And it's more commonly called energy bending. Basically, he can use the natural energies of the body and actually take people's bending skills away. He's used this twice. He's used this on Fire Lord Ozai, so he didn't have to kill him because he didn't want to kill the evil Fire Lord. And they used this on the bloodbender known as Yukon, which was before the time of Korra. And he basically just channels the energy through their bodies and just pulls let's call it the energies needed to bend away. It's very effective, and no one who has spirit bending done to them can ever bend again. Okay, one thing. Misconception, Aang cannot metal bend. It is specifically stated that Aang cannot metal bend, and people think just because he knew his Toph, he can metal bend. That's not how it works. If you read the canon comics, repeat, the canon comics, Aang tried to learn metal bending, but he couldn't. And by Toph's own admission, not all earthbenders can metal bend, just like not every person in the world can bend the elements, regardless of where they live or were born. Um, and it took her quite a while just to find the first 3 students to do metal bending, and then it grew from there and became more popular. But even in like Legend of Korra series, Bolin, who was a very prominent and powerful earthbender, he couldn't learn metal bending, but he could learn lava bending, which was a very rare form of bending. And so, as you can see, it's fine that Aang didn't learn metal bending. He didn't need to. He had the other 5. So there you go. In the course of Aang's journey, he has fought all sorts of things. He has fought his frenemy Zuko multiple times, and Zuko is no slouch in combat, even with his temper. He's fought generals of the Fire Nation. He's fought generals of the Earthbending Nation when they weren't exactly nice to him. He's fought spirits. He's fought armies on his own. He helped take down some of the airships that Fire Lord Ozai was going to use to burn the Earth Kingdom to the ground. He is fast enough to, again, run on water, dodge arrows from close and long distances. He can redirect lightning via the redirection technique that he learned from Zuko and Uncle Iroh. Best character ever. Okay, well, Toph is the best character ever. Oh! So, pain! So, he is incredibly strong. I forgot this. He actually, during his earthbending training, lifted a massive boulder on his back, Samurai Jack style. The comparisons are uncanny. Which would have been at least a couple tons. Like I said, he's punched through rocks, through stone, through wood. He is incredibly nimble, able to redirect his airflow basically on a dime. He is incredibly durable. He's fallen from great heights and gotten up like it was nothing. He took a lightning blast full point blank, and he almost died, but he honestly would have lived even with Katara's help, most likely. And then, of course, there is his biggest thing of all, the Avatar state. The Avatar state is a spiritual connection to every avatar that has ever lived. So, oh my gosh, I just forgot the guy's name. Oh, that is killing me. I knew his name. It was like Wong. Yeah, I think that was it. I gotta look that up. But you get the point. He can connect to every avatar, and through their knowledge, he can do incredible things. Wan, there we go. It's Wan. You get it? Wan. That's so clever. So from Wan to Roku, he has all their knowledge. He has every experience that they have ever done, and through that, his bending powers get increased exponentially, to the extent that when he fought Fire Lord Ozai, he was actually pretty much in a tie with him in terms of power, and then he went Avatar state and just owned him. It was epic. The only downsides to Aang, he is a bit immature. He is 12. Okay, even if you count it's stated that the whole series only takes place in over a couple of months, but even if he's somehow aged to 13, he's still a kid. He is very kid-like. He is very immature at times, but remember, we have to count the entirety of his arc, and that includes Korra, where he was an adult avatar before he died. And so he eventually mellowed out. He is an incredibly calm guy. He doesn't get flustered too easily. He can get flustered, but it does take a lot. And his calm nature and his training has allowed him to defeat all manner of opponents. So, and Aang is honestly considered one of the greatest avatars, and because of that, the 4 nations were able to live in peace and have a new age of prosperity until Legend of Korra happened, and no, that's another story entirely. Moving on. Edward Elric, from a young age, was with his younger brother Alphonse, and they had shown a mastery of, or let's call it a prodigal sense of alchemy. Alchemy was their world's main form of power, and through using certain transmutation symbols, could do various effects. But these two, like especially Edward, didn't really need them, but they did use them eventually, and their mother fully encouraged this ability. However, their mother died from an illness, and in their grief, they decided to try and use transmutation to bring her back. Hashtag not a good idea. Okay. Has anything ever good happen from bringing people back to life? I'm looking at you, Supernatural fans. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And for the record, I want Castiel in a death battle, and I will totally do my Castiel impression for you when that happens. Anyway, um, so naturally, as this is an anime, it went horribly wrong. Edward lost his arm and part of his leg. Alphonse lost his entire body, and Edward actually had to put his soul via transmutation symbol into a body of armor. But the side effect of this was that because he saw the gate and witnessed the truth, anime everyone, he now had the ability to use alchemy without the use of transmutation symbols, which literally does not happen. It Everyone has to use a symbol except for Edward. So by clapping his hands together, he can use the power of his own will to use alchemy in its fullest potential. And through this, he went to the state school and actually was named the Full Metal Alchemist. And he was the youngest member to be brought up. I believe he said he was only 12 at the time, 12 or 16. I get it's a lot of numbers I have to remember. I'm not a death battle. I can't remember everything. He was the youngest person accepted. He was the fastest to qualify, fastest to be trained, and fastest to be a master of it all. So he was sent through from the school by Bradley, named the Fuhrer, not Hitler, and he went on a quest to find the Philosopher's Stone because he wanted to bring back his brother Alphonse in full form, not just the soul that it was in the body. But of course, it's an anime, so nothing ever goes right, and he went and fought all sorts of beings, including the seven deadly sins, other alchemists, father, Coding Kids Next Door reference, and so on and so forth. Now, in alchemy, it's not necessarily you're bending the elements, you are transmutating the elements into something that you need. Okay, so it's very different from bending. For example, Edward has a auto male arm, which I'm not sure how you feel about that name, but whatever. Has an auto male arm made of metal. Okay, and that arm, oh sorry, it's this one. The arm can actually be transmutated into all kinds of weapons. So he can basically metal bend, but he can transmutate it into swords. He did it into a cannon one time. He turned into an umbrella because why not? He can turn into blade spears. Basically anything he think he can do with his arm, he basically can do it. And then he has been shown to wield lightning. He can turn uh, the rocks into metal. He actually did do the legendary alchemy thing of turning lead into gold, and then he turned it right back just to screw with someone. He has turned rocks into metal and then molded them to be like cannons and fire at them. He's turned a gun into a trumpet. He has molded blood into weapons. It was really weird, but it was a large pool of blood, so it's not like you can just for you Avatar fans, you can't blood bend and manipulate them like that. He has to have like a large pool of blood and then use the iron in that to he actually this one's hilarious to talk about. He actually used the drool of a monster and turned it into ice because it's water technically. He just had to deconstruct it, which is another thing he can do. He can actually turn certain elements and objects, deconstruct them into their basic elements, and then transmutate them. So if he doesn't have ammunition on him, he can use the elements around him to do so and make him what he wants. Another good example of this is he took a tree that was just basic tree, and he transmutated it into a swinging log that hit an enemy, because why not when you're a Full Metal Alchemist? So yeah, his powers are pretty nuts, and of course he has used his alchemy for defensive techniques as well. He's blocked plenty of attacks, but he's also incredibly strong and durable on his own. He has kicked and punched monsters many times his size away without much effort. He is incredibly fast. He has been known to go up against some of the fastest people in the series and keep up with them no problem. He also has a genius level intellect. He has actual encyclopedic knowledge of just about everything that is alchemy. And he's so intelligent that he's actually able to read a person's attack style and then mimic it himself. That's actually how he learned the deconstruction technique, because a foe of his actually used it, and then he understood it and he used it then too. And of course, because all he has to do is clap his hands to start his transmutation, it doesn't take him long to do attacks. Um, and then his feats are pretty impressive. He's defeated all sorts of alchemists. He's defeated the seven deadly sins. He's defeated Father in quite brutal and epic fashion. He has he did find the Philosopher's Stone, and in what I consider one of the greatest sacrifices in anime history, he actually gave up his alchemy powers and brought back his brother. So he was willing to literally sacrifice everything for his brother, including his massive amount of power, which goes to show that I like saying Elric more. That sounds more anime. Edward Elric is a very compassionate soul, and when it comes to those he cares about, he'll do anything for them, which is good because Elric is a dick every other time. I was gonna say Elric from now on. It's much easier to say. And yes, I'm saying Edward is hard to say. You're welcome. Anyway, Elric um, is pretty much a jerk. He is very, very, very immature. He's very sarcastic. He's very antagonistic. He will, for example, his future wife, Winnie, he would get in arguments with her all the time, but eventually they fell for each other, and he eventually admitted his feelings and blah blah blah. He then he and his brother argue all the time, even though they clearly love each other like brothers do. But when it comes to people like of authority figures, he just can't stand them. He doesn't like doing what he's told not to do. That he's that kind of a kid. And when it comes to being told he can't do something, he doesn't like that at all. So he's very antagonistic to a lot of people. So unless you get on his good side, he is the most blunt, irritating kid you are ever going to meet. So thank goodness Alphonse is his brother. So aside from that though, he honestly is incredibly powerful. He's easily one of the most beloved anime characters ever. I have plenty of friends who love Full Metal. I can honestly, I've never watched Full Metal Alchemist, but Edward Elric is a legend in the anime world, and a lot of people love his anime series and the manga. So it's really cool that he's finally Death Battle. So who wins? Okay, I'll admit that I was a lot biased to Aang because I really thought that he just kills it, and I honestly still think he does. But Elric has some things that can um, go against Aang. First off, he's just as strong, just as fast, and just as endurant. That genius level intellect has helped him in battle more times than not, including just letting him be able to just drown out everything going on in the battle and focusing on what needs to happen. Second of all, his alchemy at points can most definitely um, how should I say this? Block or counter Aang's bending. There's no doubt. For example, they both can use Earth basically the same way. Eldric has, and I just said Eldric. This is no fun. Elric has sent pillars of Earth at people, including Father, to devastating effect, and Aang has done the same thing with his people. Elric and Aang can both use water in a way to turn it into ice. They both summon fire. Elric can use lightning, but Aang can redirect lightning. There's a lot of counters here. The difference for me is twofold. One is psychology. As noted, they're both very immature characters. But one of Aang's greatest lessons from a man who was going to teach him firebending at first was, how to use an opponent's emotions against them. And the best example of this was against Admiral Zhao. Aang didn't launch a single shot at Zhao, and Zhao in turn just kept releasing firebending because he was just trying to overpower Aang, and not a good idea. He's the Avatar. And as a result, not only did he lose, he lost his entire firebending fleet that he had with him because he burned them to the ground. Why does this matter with Elric? Elric has a key psychological flaw. He's short. He will literally lose his mind if a person calls him short. To that end, once Aang finds out, he'll remember they're probably actually about the same size. Aang was a pretty short kid. The Airbenders are not known for being too tall, except for maybe Tenzin, his son, Aang's son, from the Korra days. Anyway, once he calls him short, either on accident or on purpose, Elric's gonna lose it, and he's gonna just go crazy with his attacks, which Aang will use to his advantage and just draw him out more and find the weakness and exploit it. Second, while I know that Elric's alchemy abilities are very powerful, I just feel Aang's is better. They're more versatile. They don't require the clap. They don't require much thought on Aang's part. He just has to do the motions, and he can manipulate the elements to his will. I think that'll be much more devastating. Plus, the seismic sense will make it so that Elric can't surprise Aang as much as you think he can. And then, of course, there's the Avatar state. I'm not including energy bending here because much like the whole can Natsu Dragneel absorb Ace from One Piece, we don't know if I keep saying spirit bending. Energy bending will take away Elric's alchemy abilities. We don't know. It's possible because of the natures of bending and alchemy and how they both require spiritual power and willpower. But because this is two different universes with two different sets of rules, I don't think energy bending is going to matter here. But the Avatar state will. So while I would definitely say that Elric is smarter than Aang, at least in terms of knowledge and encyclopedia mastery, and again, Aang's a master himself, especially since we're counting the Korra days where he was a full-on master avatar with like decades of experience. Aang's Avatar state makes him just that much better. All right, and even though Aang can die in the Avatar state, the only time he did almost die in the Avatar state was when he was literally blindsided by Azula who shot him in the back. That was it. When he went to Avatar state every other time, no one could touch him. And Korra proved that the Avatar state can, make it so you don't feel pain as much, you don't react to poison as much, etc., etc., etc. So, Avatar state is the ultimate trump card in this case here. So, with all of that, while this is an incredibly fun matchup, and I think that Elric does have some things to show Aang that might surprise him. Oh, and remember, metal bending, that won't phase Aang because he knows Toph. He can't stop the metal bending or the transmutation of the arm and leg and such, but he's been around Toph so much that he knows, how to dodge and everything. So I just want to be clear about that. So with all of that, I'm selecting Aang as my winner of this death battle. So with that, I'm ending this episode of Todd Talk. Who do you think is going to win in this battle between Avatar and the Full Metal Alchemist? Let me know in the comments below. So I thank you for watching. If you made this far, I know you were listening, and I'll see you around.